backcountry shows. Don't blame you if you lose interest if I go through dead zones, because let's face it, there's dead country shows. Don't blame you if you lose interest if I go through dead zones, because let's face it, there's dead zones. And I mean, as far as cell phone coverage, the TikTok shop is awesome. But the cell phone coverage in the backcountry of Oregon isn't that great. I say backcountry, but it's just not near the interstate. So, it's not like we're in some remote wilderness area. No, it's just not near the interstate. But I do lose coverage with regularity because it's not heavily developed. But yeah, this is Oregon. Right now, the end of April, we should still have another, couple weeks of rain, but we really haven't had as much rain as I would like. I think we had maybe a couple of drizzles earlier today, but for the most part, Oregon is in a severe drought. So all of this green leaf matter that you see here is, potential fuel load. We've had it became politicized to say those words. I don't know if the TikTok shop even lets me say global warming. But as climate change accelerates, we're going to see more of these prolonged drought conditions here in the state of Oregon. And, it's honestly terrifying, right? Because we kind of need water. It's what keeps our state alive. Our state relies on things like timber and agriculture for our economy. And without timber and agriculture, the healthcare sector and semiconductors just aren't going to carry the economic needs of our state. So we really need the rain. If you're listening out there and you have your hands on the levers of geoengineering, I would appreciate it if you could just geoengineer a little rain for us over here. We really need it. I mean, obviously the old ways are good too. So if your traditions and practices allow for you to make a prayer for the state of Oregon to receive some rain, we could really, really benefit from it. The salmon here, without rain, the salmon won't survive. They're already facing plenty of challenges as far as waterways being saturated in nitrates and sulfates from potassium fertilizers, rising water temperatures from clear cutting and logging, also dams, culverts, and illegal water catchments keep the water from going back to the rivers where it sustains the salmon. So the salmon here face a lot of difficulties and challenges without water. Everybody does. And the reality is we're going to see less and less water as time goes on. We're going to, climate, I've been saying this on other platforms for a while. Climate retreat is an immediate need. Climate retreat is an immediate need. Right now, we need to make meaningful changes in the lives of marginalized communities who are currently threatened by climate change. Right here where I live, it seems all nice and peaceful and beautiful and everything. We got all these rolling fields, there's golden flowers, it seems nice, but climate retreat is an immediate need. There are people, for instance, in Alaska, where they were struck by a typhoon which left their villages uninhabitable. The place where their families have lived since time immemorial were devastated by a typhoon, and then as a result of it, the people were displaced to Anchorage. And now they have nowhere to return to. There's a massive population of indigenous people displaced to Anchorage, and their village was wiped off of the map. Okay, so when we talk about fossil fuels driven climate change, we have to keep in mind that there are real human beings, real villages, real grandmothers, mothers, daughters, sisters, brothers, fathers, grandfathers who have had their entire way of life destroyed. All of their boats, all of their trap lines, all of their, they didn't have time to prepare for the flood to strike. It hit so quickly and with such devastating power that their traditional regalia, they lost their regalia, they lost heirlooms that are irreplaceable. So climate change has real life effects on people who are living today in Alaska, who are currently displaced. So yes, we absolutely need to think about climate change in terms of climate retreat. Okay, I'm personally right now not in a situation where I need to make a climate retreat. However, in July or September, if what the meteorologists and climatologists are saying happens, then this whole valley could be socked in with particulates and wildfire smoke. This whole area could be completely, devastated by smoke. And when you breathe that smoke, it increases your chances of heart attack and stroke. And it causes things like asthma and emphysema and bronchitis. All the ailments. I mean, I'm no doctor. However, I understand that breathing smoke was one of the leading causes of death of people in the time before we had modern conveniences. We had to do things like cook on a fire. Smoke damage did a lot of, smoke inhalation did a lot of damage to primitive people who were trying to survive the conditions of their society. And just going through this thriving metropolis of Monmouth. If you're wondering where this is, I don't even know if there's anybody in there. It's kind of hard for me to look away from the road. I don't want to look away from the road. So if you're in the chat, I appreciate you being there. If you're saying things, I appreciate it. I'm sorry if I'm not answering. Thanks for any likes or shares. Just taking a little drive through scenic Western Oregon on this Sunday afternoon and sharing a few of my thoughts and feelings about the modern ecology and climate in the moment. So yeah, just it says something, invite Mischievous Raven to join as a guest. Hey guys, I'm driving through Western Oregon and right now heading to Portland the back way, right? So there's any number of ways to go from Southern Oregon to Northern Oregon, but one of them is along Highway 99. That's what I'm on right now, Highway 99. If you're a creepy stalker, what are you doing? But yeah, that's where I am. If you're trying to find me, I'm not undoxable. I'm not trying to I'm not in hiding. I'm out there, man. I'm out there. And I mean out there, okay? But Western Oregon is very beautiful. It's largely agricultural, highly reliant on migrant labor. In fact, the state of Oregon made special carve-outs in their zoning laws to allow for multiple family occupancy of farm labor housing. So typically zoning laws are set up in such a way that you can't have a whole lot of people all living in one house because it puts a strain on the infrastructure of the house and the local infrastructure. You know, these buildings have a fire code. You can't put too many people inside of the building in case it catches on fire and they have to escape quickly. You don't want the entryways or exit ways to be blocked by people. So they set occupancy laws about how many people can be inside of a building, how many people can reside in a building. That's why you hear phrases like single family dwelling. Okay, so if you look at most of these dwellings around here, they're single family dwellings. But if you look at the single wide trailers, RVs, little ramshackle lean-to buildings, they'll have a bunch of farm workers living in there. And without adequate facilities as far as restrooms, kitchens, or even sleeping space, so that people will have to take it in turns to sleep, okay? It's against the law. Except the Oregon legislature, in all of their wisdom and infinite accommodation of the corporate class of farmers, made a special carve out in the zoning law to allow farmers to keep substandard housing for their workers. In Oregon, if you're actively exploiting people for farm labor, you can also house them in substandard housing. And when I say substandard, I mean there's a standard at which housing is considered livable. There's a standard at which housing is considered overcrowded. There's a standard at which you have to maintain restrooms if you're letting people live on your property. But the state of Oregon made a waiver so you can let farm workers live in squalor. You can let farm workers live without adequate restrooms. You can let farm workers live without adequate kitchens. And a lot of these fields that you see around you, looking at Western Oregon right now, are farmed and maintained by migrant workers who are given inadequate housing that is literally against the law. It would be a crime to let anyone else live in housing like that, but it's okay to let farm workers live in housing like that. So, you know, it is beautiful to behold, and I love Western Oregon, but I recognize the price that's paid to allow this beauty to exist, and I know who is bearing the burden and paying the price. It's not the farmers, okay? It's not you and I. It's the migrant workers who have been deemed as being less worthy of a quality of life that everyone deserves. Pardon me, I'm getting a little bit parched. I don't really talk that much in my day-to-day life, so doing these streams, it really takes a toll on my voice because I just am not used to talking. There was a time when I talked all the time and was a professional big mouth, if you will. I had a lot to say, and people like to pay to hear me to say it. But that was a long time ago. That was a long, long time ago. Maybe it's because I'm talking too loud. I don't know, but taking a little toll on my throat. Hey folks, that's the scenic Polk County Fairgrounds. Polk County Fairgrounds, yes indeed. It's apparently badly in need of repair. They're trying to get the residents to open up some tax money for the Polk County Fairgrounds without much luck. Local politics, pretty important to you guys, I'm sure. I don't know where you guys are at. Hey, look, it says something, I've got a flash goal. I don't know what that means. I can't really be looking over there right now. TikTok, why are you trying to grab my attention? Can't you tell I'm trying to drive? I'm driving here, people. I'm driving. I can't be looking. Your little flash goals, I'm sure they're important. Probably what what I have to do to keep the algorithm paying attention. By the way, do your shopping in the TikTok shop. The TikTok shop is the place to do your shopping. 9 out of 10 Tawassis agree the TikTok shop is awesome, and the 10th Tawassi, nobody really gives a flying flip what that guy has to say. Who even respects that? I don't even know who that Tawassi is. Who is that Tawassi guy anyway? By the way, my name's Tawassi. My parents named me Tawassi. They were hippies and Indians, go figure. So they gave me a name that is both a hippie and an Indian name. And for my entire life, I've been a hippie Indian. So there you go, that's me, Tawassi, the hippie Indian. But yeah, Native American, my family's Pacific Northwest tribes, Upper Skagit, Nooksack, Swinomish, Snohomish. My family's from kind of around the Bellingham area, if you need colonial maps to know. And then the rest of my family on my mom's side, kind of from Bethesda, and before that, Poland. Mom's side, kind of from Bethesda, and before that, Poland and Ukraine. I've recently learned I have Ukrainian ancestry on my grandmother's side. My maternal great-grandmother was Polish, was Ukrainian, and my maternal great-grandfather was Polish, and they met when they were fleeing the First World War and trying to escape. They were Jewish, so it wasn't quite considered the Holocaust at that time, but I think we all understand what they were trying to escape was war. People were being conscripted and sent to the front lines, and the worst things imaginable were happening to women. So my great-grandparents fled Eastern Europe and were able to eventually make it to the East Coast. Grandfather was born on the ship on the way across, and my grandfather was born on the ship on the way across. Think about things, right? So my mom, first generation American, but my dad, never any generation off of the American, but my dad, never any generation off of the ancestry on my dad's side doesn't trace back to anywhere besides Northwest Washington, which is where our creation story happened. It's funny to me, right? So you guys have your creation story over there in the Garden of Eden, the Fertile Crescent, oh, the first human came from the Fertile Crescent and the cradle of civilization. But that's not our creation story. Our creation story says our first person was lowered to the ground. Right here was lowered to the ground. You may have heard the term Star Nation. We are Star Nation. We trace our ancestry to the stars. So, yeah, little tirade there, but yeah, this area is largely colonial, colonizer, agriculture. They chopped down the forest, dug up the Camas, dug up the Wabanaki route, massacred the local animals and replaced it with this. It's like a sterile countryside. Spray it with all their glyphosates and come through and dig up the whole thing and plant it with monocrops monocrops that won't even survive without massive dumps of pesticides and fungicides and fertilizer. You know, they just like wreak havoc on the environment, okay? All the fertilizers and pesticides and fungicides and garbage that they dump on this hillside to make it live washes off, okay? It's not like it's, you know, sown to the ground there. No, when it rains, all those fertilizers and everything flow downstream and it ends up in the river. And then that topsoil and all that fertilizer ends up flowing downstream into the ocean. And now the Oregon coast is the fastest acidifying coast in the world. In all of the world, no part of the ocean is acidifying faster than the Oregon Ocean. Why do you suppose that is? It's because of these green fields. These green fields right here, all of that fertilizer that gets dumped onto there eventually finds its way down into that, you know, little gully right there. And then once it washes out of the ditch, the roadside ditch, it ends up in a stream, and that stream goes into a larger river. That river goes down to the ocean. And all of this fertilizer pours into the ocean, causing the pH to shift to more acidic, which makes it so the shellfish don't have strong of a shell and die, expire. So, you know, the acidification of the ocean makes it so the temperature of the ocean rises more quickly, and eventually it's going to cause the sea to boil. A lot of this stuff is just stuff that scientists already told us about a long time ago, but people rather live in ignorance and try and take ill-gotten gains off the destruction of the whole planet. We know who they are. It's companies like Cargill and Bayer and Monsanto, which ironically made Agent Orange and also make white phosphorus. So the same company who made white phosphorus, which is, by the way, a weapon banned in war, but still heavily used, it causes your flesh to catch fire. That company is responsible for poisoning all this land and the water and the ocean. And it's just the same handful of malcontent, no good billionaires who act like their thoughts and opinions should lead to the end of life on Earth. They literally want to ruin all life on Earth. And it might not seem like it because it looks all verdant and green, but these fields, these crops are a part of it because they're contributing to the acidification of the ocean. And all of the fossil fuels that they have to burn to go around doing these monocrops, it's totally ruining life as we know it, okay? So, you know, actually I'm not sorry to be a Debbie Downer. I'm just a malcontent whose righteous indignation you decided to tune into in this fine Sunday afternoon. So you see this large stand of trees up here on the right. These stands of trees are typically around homesteads. There'll be a house in the middle of that somewhere. And what happened is, when all of the colonizers arrived here in Oregon, this was covered with old-growth forest. This was all timber. There were no fields here. And they've they have continuously destroyed the forest that used to exist here, but they keep the forest around their homes. They keep the stands of trees around their homes. Why do you suppose they do that? I'll tell you. is because trees provide shade. That shade keeps the temperature down. They also provide windbreaks so your house doesn't have to be heated as much in the winter. So trees actually act to stabilize the temperature around your property. They keep the devastating winds from hitting you, and they keep the devastating sun from hitting you. So the farmers are happy to keep trees around their homes, but they don't want trees everywhere because they rather, you can see what it does. This soil over here on the right is barren. There's nothing alive on it. It's just brown, desolate, barren land. And they have to do that. They have to totally destroy it and make it infertile and get it to the point where they can plant these monocrops on there to somehow try and survive. But it's just unsustainable. And I don't just mean ecologically, but also economically, okay? If you were here at the very beginning of this stream, I was talking about how you look at these fields and need to understand that each of these fields are maintained by migrant workers. They're not paying people a living wage to do these jobs. They're finding people who they can exploit, who they're already living on the margins of society that might not have a legal reason to be here, who are, might even be in hiding. And they take those people and take advantage of their labor. They don't find people who are empowered, thoughtful, strong, capable people, independent people. They find people that they can exploit. I mean, I'm sorry to make it out like that. I'm sure that people who are exploited possess all of those capabilities. They're just compromised, and then because they're compromised, these indecent capitalist fat takers use exploitative practices on them. The term fat taker, I love it. It's so appropriate because the people who end up doing the work are out in punishing conditions, and they're paid substandard pay, and they're forced to live in substandard housing that would be a crime if anybody else lived in it. And all of those wrongs are done to people so the fat takers can take that much more profit. They want to take profit. They're so excited and aroused and just turned on by making money that they're willing to ruin people's lives for it. In California, people are already dying in the fields as farm workers. It's not even, the spring is barely sprung, okay? I guess it's halfway sprung. But they're already expiring in the fields, worked to death. Okay, that's what happened to the guy at the Amazon fulfillment center. Let's be honest about it. He didn't just have a medical emergency or a medical crisis. He was worked to death. By the way, the TikTok shop is a great place to work yourself to death if you love the TikTok shop. The TikTok shop is awesome. Do not work yourself to death, guys. Do not work yourself to death. Shop at the TikTok shop. It's going to make all of your troubles go away. Their fulfillment centers would never do that to a person. So, it happens, okay? They have to create specific laws to protect farm workers from the sorts of harms that their bosses are willing to see them suffer. they have to make laws to protect farm workers from the types of harms that their bosses are willing to see them suffer. And do you think those laws stop the bosses? Or do you think the bosses are just like, we're not going to follow that law. It's more of a guideline. It was kind of a suggestion. It was a good idea that they had. It's not really the law. It's just something they're thinking about. They thought it would be a good idea. Really, the law. It's just something they're thinking about. They thought it would be a good idea. Yeah, OSHA keeps a record of how many people pass away in the field at their job. You can look it up. There's concrete numbers. Of course, they might be underreported, but there are reported numbers. It's not like some fantastical idea that I'm just pulling up for shock. I'm just like making something up. No, it happens so much that they keep a record of it. They have documents because it happens that often. So yeah, if you work. So yeah, if you work your job to exist, because farm owners are willing to until they pass. Willing to until they pass away from this world. The farm put their standard housing and go to the legislature and to pass a law to make it so the substandard housing isn't a crime. They knew that the conditions they were forcing their workers into were so bad that they could potentially face criminal liability over not giving people adequate restrooms, not giving people adequate kitchens, not giving people adequate space to sleep. And because they knew they could face liability, instead of making better housing for farm workers, they made the legislator create a law that allowed it. They're like, I know this is bad, but instead of not doing bad, let's just say that doing bad isn't a crime anymore. Okay, guys? And the legislature was like, yeah, that's okay with us. That should be fine. That should be fine. You want to exploit people to death? That's fine. Go for it. No biggie. No biggie, my guy. We got you. We'll write that legislation. Can't remember what the law was called. It passed like maybe 2 years ago. Basically said if you have farm workers who live in seasonal housing, that seasonal housing doesn't have to meet the standards that are regularly required for habitation. And it's okay if that housing exceeds the numbers that typically would cause a violation from the fire department. It's okay. You need more workers? You can't pay enough for them to be able to afford a place to live? Well, let's just let them live in substandard housing and we'll make it legal. And that's not even a joke, okay? That's how all of this exists. There would not be fertile farmland surrounding me right now if they weren't putting farm workers into squalor and substandard housing. If they weren't putting farm workers into substandard housing that is literally criminal for anybody else, they wouldn't be able to afford to have these kind of farms. The only reason that we have this kind of agriculture is through exploitation. Exploitation. And a lot of times what ends up happening is the farm workers do not like the life that they're being given and want something better. And so they'll take action to try and find a more meaningful job or a better opportunity. And the bosses have actually been caught holding on to their travel documents, keeping their passports, keeping their pay. So, whatever food you have on your plate, whatever kind of grass seed you use to seed your lawn, whatever kind of, whatever life you're living out there, you should be thankful that a farm worker put their entire self on the line so you could have that. Because without all of the criminal exploitation of farm workers, we would not have a farm economy. We would not have an agriculture economy. The only way that we have modern agriculture is through the brutal, endless exploitation of migrant workers. Anytime you're driving through the farmland, look around, recognize and understand it only exists because of brutal exploitation, marginalization, and wage theft. It's because of the greedy bastards who run this country that we have this, and they're able to do that to marginalized people. They're only able to do that because we have marginalized people who are disempowered and don't have their authentic voice. They don't have the authority in their life to be able to speak out and stand up for themselves, because the federal government will come and fucking take them away. So they have to live with the indignities forced on them by these greedy bastards. I mean, I personally would rather pay more. I would rather pay more at the grocery store and for farm workers to have a quality of life than for these greedy bastards to be able to keep depriving them of their basic humanity. Okay? Like I was explaining earlier, farm workers lose their life in the field. They expire in the field working. I would rather pay more and those people be able to live. I mean, we don't think about it like that very often, do we? The reason that I can afford grapefruit at the grocery store is because somebody was exploited. The reason that I can afford cereal and milk at the grocery store is because somebody was exploited. If someone wasn't exploited, the cereal and milk would be too expensive for me to afford it. So rather than be a decent human being, which is all that's required to pay somebody enough to live, they rather take the fat for themselves, okay? Fat takers. They take the fat for themselves. They leave the gristle on the plate for us. People have some deluded concept of how farms function, and all I can figure is that they've either never looked into it or intentionally decided to remain ignorant, because the way that farms function is off of the brutal exploitation of farm labor. That's the only way that they function. Probably heard of, well, actually maybe you haven't, I don't know, I don't know you, man. I don't know who you are. But there's this little thing called the Farm Bill. And it pays subsidies to farmers whose crops have failed, so that they don't lose their farms, so they can keep paying their mortgage to the bank even after their crops have failed. And the Farm Bill basically only goes to about 80 people. As far as, excuse me, as far as who actually gets that money from the Farm Bill, it's only about 80 people. So they make money whether their crop comes in or not. That's how the insurance system works. In the Farm Bill, it pays subsidies to farmers whose crops have failed. So you actually, in the US, you actually make money by having a failing crop. In case you guys didn't know this, this is all common sense for people who understand farming. But you can't even get the crop, the seeds in the ground, if you don't have laborers out there to do it for you. If you don't have laborers out there laying the water line, if you don't have laborers out there putting down the fertilizer, and all of those laborers, they don't come from just, you know, Iowa City or wherever you guys are, you know, Salem, Kaiser. No, they come from freaking Guatemala. They come from Honduras. They come from Argentina. They come from all kinds of places that are not the United States. Because the type of labor that farm workers are subjected to, people in the United States would not accept for themselves. All this stuff, I mean, all this stuff is purposeful. It's not an accident the way things are happening right now. You have to be cognizant of the fact that there are multiple overlapping plans unfolding all at the same time. You have to get all of the people who regularly do the farm labor out, so that you can force the people who have accrued the debt into those jobs. Are you carrying a huge student loan? Can't get a job in your chosen profession? Well, there's a farm labor job waiting for you. Oh, you don't want to do back-breaking labor in the sun until you expire from heat exhaustion? Well, you should have thought about that before you took your student loan, Jimmy. Little bruh. You have to get rid of all the farm workers, okay? You have to get rid of all the farm workers and lock the borders so you can push down the minimum wage. The plan is to keep the American people inside of the US and force them into labor that they wouldn't normally be willing to do. You have to destroy all the other jobs with AI. So there's nothing for the people to do except the most brutal labor that previously they would not do, and force them to it. And then pay them the least possible. I mean, the future is not written in stone, but it's also been well established as the plan for so long that I know it. If I know the plan, it has to have been around for a while. But yeah, that's the plan. All of us, avocado toast, you know, yerba mate drinking, participation prize winning proletariat are going to have to buckle down and do the work that the neo-fascist tech bros want us to. Sorry if you're not into it, but if you aren't a neo-fascist tech bro, you don't really get that choice, do you? I saw a video today from a woman who has she has 2 master's degrees and is a candidate for her doctorate. She is exceedingly educated. She has something like 18 years of experience in her field and cannot find a job. Has been out of a job for something like 2.5 years. Put in thousands of applications. Only ever received a few job offers, of which most were scams. She is exceedingly talented, experienced, educated. Could not get hired anywhere for years. So you got to understand that in a certain point in time, whatever kind of comfort and ease that you've been enjoying, that you think you're entitled to, that's going away. And this is why I've been on a rant about getting food in storage, because they have used hunger as a weapon over and over again, over and over and over. And you might think that you're not interested in doing a farm labor job right now, but after a certain amount of hunger, you're going to find yourself willing to do a farm labor job. Yeah, it's a beautiful day for a drive. Sunday afternoon, Western Oregon, highly agricultural area. Just taking the back way up to Portland. Can't really see right now if there are people in the chat. I appreciate you if you are there. Obviously, you're welcome to tap the screen if you appreciate any of the things I've had to say, or share out the live. I do have a link tree. Anyway, I'm just talking about like the agricultural economy, what it takes to prop it up, who actually pays the price, what the costs are of being a farm worker, how none of this existed before, and what it's doing to our planet. Just a bunch of leftist propaganda and progressive neoliberal thought. I shouldn't say neoliberal, because let's face it, I'm much more like an anarchist than a liberal. I'm not into the DNC or whatever. Let's face it, I'm much more like an anarchist than a liberal. I'm not into the DNC or whatever kind of baloney they happen to be peddling, whether it's create a healthy compromise with a fascist. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of the rhetoric coming from the right. I'm starting to get a little bit tired of the rhetoric coming from the right, because they're pretending that they have some moral high ground, and the guy that they're standing behind is among the worst humans that the planet has ever seen. As far as what he has been proven and alleged to have done to children, then people like that really, the people who support a person like that, it says something about them. It tells you about the content of their character, about the moral compass that they possess. If you look to a guy who does things like that to children, it says something about your moral compass. It says something about the type of human being that you are if you stand behind a person who does that to children. And we have to be really clear about the fact that they are the political minority. There are not that many people in this world who support that absolute pile of crap. They had to do enormous gerrymandering and, let's face it, fraud in order to achieve those election results. Without enormous gerrymandering and fraud, they never would have been able to pull off that electoral win. Because the people in the US who are decent human beings by far outnumber the Nazis, the Yahtzees. And sorry, the TikTok shop is the best place to buy the game of Yahtzee. If you play Yahtzee, if you love Yahtzee, check out the TikTok shop for a traveler's edition of Yahtzee. The point that I'm making here, we're in a bad way right now as a country. As a country, things are not good. And it's easy to look around and not see it. We look around and we can kind of pretend that things are still okay. People are shopping. You know, there's kids are going to school. You know, businesses are open. Their festivals are happening. But just because everyone is going on as if everything is normal doesn't mean everything is normal. Just because people are moving forward with their regular lives does not change the fact that things are not supposed to be this way. Things are not supposed to be this way. We know it. We can feel it. Right in the pit of our stomach, there's this sense of wrongness about the condition of our country. And the rest of the world, their eyes wide open to it, because for us, we're like fish swimming in water. We can't see past the water because it's all around us and everything that we know. But for people outside of the country, it's not like the water for them. They can see what's going on. They're like, this is messed up. And it's finally starting to dawn on some of the people who have had their head in the sand over it, that things are not okay right now. People have seriously had their head in the sand over it, trying to act as though we're still like some moral authority in the world. We're not. And if we go nuclear, which there are plenty of indications and signs that that's what these, you know, horrible people want to do, is actually drop a nuclear bomb on 10 million Iranians. They want to do it. There's even reports saying that the nuclear football was accessed and that top generals had to talk the Cheeto out of doing it. He had his finger on the proverbial button. He was ready to drop the bomb. Nobody nobody should have to live with a leader like that. Nobody should have to live with a leader like that. A leader who is willing to annihilate 10 million people. I can't imagine having that kind of a mentality where you could even consider that you have a right to end the lives of 10 million people. And we're supposed to respect that. We're supposed to look up to that. We're supposed to salute that. A person who is willing to put an end to 10 million people is supposed to have our fealty, is supposed to have our loyalty. At this point, if you're still loyal to the guy, it really says that you don't care about life on Earth. You don't care about human life at all. Because he's running concentration camps where people are unable to survive. We don't even know and can barely guess at the types of cruelties that people are facing inside of those facilities. Because there's very little, if any, oversight. They're basically hidden from all the world. The people who are allowed to have oversight are given very limited views. The facilities are whitewashed and cleaned up, and the wrongdoings are hidden and scrubbed so that it can't be seen. But the people who survived it are telling the tales. And even the coroners are telling the tales. We know for a fact that the agents are murdering people in there. They're murdering people in there. It's a fact. The coroners have come out and said it. The people who these agents said were doing self-harm were actually murder victims. So the people who are out here tending to the vineyards, making it so you can have your little Chablis Blanc or whatever, you know, I don't even know what you guys drink. I don't even know what you guys drink. Some sort of bougie, stomped on wine bullshit. These farm workers make that crap for you. They make that crap for you, and you send them off to pass away inside of a concentration camp. I'll tell you, the vineyards, this is Oregon, right? The vineyards in Oregon, they're not maintained and run by Frenchmen. All of these wines with their little fancy chateau names on them, it's Mexicans making that. It's people from Colombia and Venezuela and Honduras and Guatemala. It's all migrant workers making your fancy wines. Oops, I got puzzle pieced. Got puzzle pieced. By the way, the TikTok shop is awesome. Everybody loves the TikTok shop. The TikTok shop is the greatest place in the whole wide world. If you don't shop at the TikTok shop, there's probably something wrong with you. All the smartest, brightest, and best minds on our planet are currently at the TikTok shop, and you should be at the TikTok shop too. It's probably because I was talking about alcohol. Alcohol is not safe for minors. This is purely for educational purposes. All I'm saying is for future generations to understand the conditions that we're living in our current society. This isn't any kind of advice or any kind of suggestions on how you should live your life or what you should do with yourself. All I'm saying is that these vineyards all around here, all I'm saying is that these vineyards all around here, they're all out here doing that work in the sun. If you were watching closely during this video, you could see what I'm talking about, because I see it with my own eyes. The people out there doing the work in the vineyards are people from other countries. Whether they're here legally or not, they're the ones who make your fancy wines for you. Without underpaying migrant workers, without taking advantage of undocumented workers, without exploitative labor practices like wage theft and forcing farm workers into substandard housing, you would not have your fine wine selection. The only reason you have your fine wine selection from Oregon is because of exploitative practices against farm workers. And I get wound up about it. These are decent human beings who deserve a quality of life like anybody else. But because they have another nation of origin, these absolute turd-wads will turn around and take advantage of them. Here in Oregon, the Department of the Bureau of Industry and Labor will not even investigate wage theft if it's less than $25 an hour. If you're being paid $24 an hour and your boss robs you of your pay, the state won't even investigate, much less bring a case or make any charges. And that's what happens. These people around here in their fancy little wine chateaus take advantage of the fact that farm laborers are not protected and do the most horrific kinds of exploitation, including not even paying them. Also, you can have a nice little bottle of wine with your, fancy dinner. People are out here eating rice, okay? They're eating beans and rice while they are exploited for their labor so that you can have your little bottle of Oregon Pinot Grigio. And for some reason, we just live in obliviousness to the fact that farm workers are mistreated and exploited. We just carry on as if it never happened, as if there's nothing wrong with it. It's more of a big deal that a farm workers advocate aids somebody than the fact that farm workers are constantly deprived of their wages, and believe me, also aid than the fact that farm workers are constantly deprived of their wages, and believe me, also aid among many. All so you can have your little Pinot Grigio. All so you can have your strawberries and cream. Meanwhile, these guys are up here living in the lap of luxury. That guy had a home gym next to his little wine chateau, a full pool with, Peloton and all that stuff. You might have been able to see it as we drove by if you were looking really close. But these houses are multi-million-dollar homes. They're an hour outside of Portland, where you don't have to live with the proletariat and the squalor and pollution down among the masses in the valley bottom. This is up here on the hilltop where all the fancy houses are and the wine grapes. And, these people, this is Oregon, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if a bunch of these people vote Democrat. They're Harris Biden voters, but they still want to ruthlessly exploit people for labor. The whole, I'm a lefty, I'm a righty, I take the red pill, I take the blue pill. Okay, guys, but capitalists don't care how you vote. All they care about is if you keep eating and if you keep working. If you stop working for them to make profits off of your labor, that's what they care about. If you try and organize a labor profits off of your labor, that's what they care about. If you try and organize a labor will come down on you like a ton of bricks. Will come down on you like a ton of bricks. Art station has cops closing it, and they use the batons in a spearing manner and started pushing forward. They speared her to the ground and they stomped on her as they pushed forward. She wasn't a protester. I get it, like, if you want to spear protesters to the ground and stomp on them, they came out, they saw that you came out with your sticks. They could have made other choices to not get speared to the ground. But that was a little old lady. She didn't know that she was going to get speared to the ground and stomped on. She didn't do anything to deserve that. She just was at her local shopping district trying to go home, and law enforcement probably gave her life-altering injuries. Just the trauma of being speared to the ground is enough, honestly. But then being stomped on, sadly, she was one of the people who actually believed in them. She went over next to them and asked them questions and stuff before they speared her to the ground. So, you know, they probably lost someone who believed in them at that point too. I'm doing 52 and this guy is right on pace with me. He's probably doing 45 anyway. He's probably doing 30. He was up closer to 55 when he was coming down that hill though. So yeah, seeing that little old lady get wrecked, she wasn't doing anything wrong. She didn't deserve that. She did nothing to deserve that. The person who speared the little old shopping lady to the ground, they really, really radicalized me against police, because I don't believe for a second that there was any need for that lady to be harmed like that. And you know, from then on, I never trust those guys. I always think that they're gonna do harm to me. I treat them as if they're a potentially loaded weapon that is on the verge of accidental discharge. They are an accidental discharge waiting to happen, every single one of them. And you know, we don't need gunmen in this country spearing protesters or little old ladies to the ground. I'm almost there, guys. I'm almost there. This is the last little stretch of the country before I'm in the city. And honestly, I don't want to live stream in the city. I don't even know if there's anybody here, but you probably don't want to see the city either, because it's the city. The thriving metropolis of Hillsboro, 6 short miles away, and at that time I will be ending the stream. So if you have been here, I appreciate you being here. If you haven't been here, well, good for you. And you know, if there were any, I can't really see the phone too well right now, but if there were any likes, if there were any shares or gifts or anything like that, I really do appreciate it. Just on here talking about my particular brand of VMism towards the corporatist class of our country that's doing unrelenting damage to both humankind, plant kind, and animal kind, as well as every surface, every air, and every fluid of a planet. It's being wrecked by these colonial bastards. they're the worst humans on earth, and honestly, if they stub their toe, good for them. They deserved it. So yeah, just to sum up, all of this used to be indigenous land. It was beautiful. Now the colonizers have been wrecking it for a few hundred years, and as a result of it, the soil is acidic, the water is acidic, the air is acidic, there's pollution in the animals, in ourselves, we're facing drought, the topsoil washes away all the time into the ocean, causing dead zones. Oregon has the most acidic water of any ocean around the whole world, and it's because of our agricultural practices. You know, we are some of the worst humans on earth in Oregon, and I absolutely believe that with my whole heart. You can tell just by looking at what is being done to the state between logging and agriculture, between data centers and microprocessor plants. The people here are willing to be subject to the worst sorts of billionaires, and I hold a lot of them in deep disdain. And if you are somehow hurt or offended by what I had to say today, good, fuck you. And if you agree with what I have to say, also good, and fuck you. I don't discriminate. Fuck all y'all. But, yeah, you know, we have a lot of work to do if we're going to make this country somewhat better. And a bunch of it's to do with acknowledging that things are bad and not pretending like they're good. So when you look around and you say, oh, look at all this modern agriculture, it's so good. No, motherfucker, it's bad. We only had this modern agriculture because it was robbed from Native American people. We only have this modern agriculture because of exploitation of farm workers. We only have this modern agriculture because it's killing the planet. It's not good. You look at it and are deceived into believing it's good because you're an ignorant fucking piece of shit. But this is terrible. We shouldn't accept this. We should fight back against it. We should make things better for our children and the children who have yet to be born. We shouldn't just accept that farm workers can be exploited to death in the fields. We shouldn't just accept that the fields are going to be poisoned with so much poison that it kills the ocean. We shouldn't accept that the water use is going to be so detrimental that we have drought and wildfires every year. And we need to make every action that we have within our capabilities to change this planet for the good. We owe it to ourselves and to the people who are yet to be born. We can't just stand around and act as if this absolute shit stack is somehow a fucking turd sandwich. I love that South Park analogy. Alright guys, I'm gonna let you go. Peace and love.